got involved in the sport of bodybuilding by having a father who was Mr. Olympia. That's not how I got into working out, but that's how I got into the sport of it. I grew up in it. I've been running around the Mr. Olympias back when they were in Chicago, and my mom, she competed too. So I was literally born from two bodybuilders. But how did I start getting into it myself? I was running track. I had track scholarships, and one day I just decided that I wanted to kind of start working out a little bit. And then I realized that working out, it made me slower, and I had to choose between being fast and track or pursuing this career that maybe one day could possibly be something. And I just fell in love with it, and it's literally what everybody says all the time. They just felt this craving from lifting, and it's just a surge that you just can't really duplicate from anything else. And I also really didn't like being on a team. It sounds horrible, but I'm not really a team player. It's really hard in high school when you're on a football team, or and even track, it's a team sport. It's a cumulative of how many points you get, and you could do well and your team still loses. I don't do well with that, and I also like when I lose that it's only my fault and there's no one else to blame but myself. So that's what I really took a liking to, and I really don't want to get into anything that I'm just another one of someone else. I want to do something where I feel like I can maybe one day be the best, and that's just something that's like a drug that I really couldn't get from anything else.
Okay. And did you find you had genetic predisposition to it? We expect that.
Yeah, it definitely helped too. When I started lifting, I remember I gained 35 pounds in like the first 2 or 3 months, and I remember thinking, man, wow, this is, everybody thinks that's the gains you're going to keep getting. I remember, it's funny, I told Phil Heath this story. When I first met him, he had just went pro, and I had just started getting into it, and I probably gained about 50 pounds in, I don't know, probably the first like 4 or 5 months. And I remember telling him, like, yeah, I'm gonna be a pro in about 4 or 5 years, like talking to him like it's easy. And I'm just thinking the math. If I gain 40 pounds in 4 months, obviously 2 years later I'm gonna be a monster. And it's really cool because it shows how little I knew about bodybuilding and the human body, but also showed how professional and what character that he was. Because any other person would have told me that I'm a fool and like you don't know what you're talking about. But all he did was he told me to just take my time and do it right and take it slow, and I really liked that because when it ended up taking 11 years for me to go pro, I really learned really fast that this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be.
And how much did you know about some of the earlier things that happened, like you being on the Olympia stage at the youngest age ever?
Yeah, I make that joke all the time, like I'm the youngest person to be on the Olympia stage. But yeah, I mean, I've heard that my whole life, and you see pictures and you hear the speech, and I mean, I think it's really cool. I think if I make it, I think it'll be one of the coolest things in the sport ever. I mean, this guy, if he wanted me to compete or not, somehow he kind of told the future 30 plus years ago, and I think that's really cool. And I was just talking to Steve Blackman, and he was telling me that he was there, and for people to be there and see that, I think that's kind of really cool for them too, to now maybe one day see me on that stage.
And let's kind of touch on, a lot of us know about this, the dispute your parents had. Did you hear about that? Is that something can you tell that story and kind of explain your knowledge of it?
Yeah, I was around. I was alive, and it was just my dad. He had a really bad temper, and there was just one time where he was losing it pretty bad, and my mom tried to calm him down. And as if you know or not, my dad was a cop, so she took his gun and she shot him. And I mean, as horrible as that sounds, and it is, it was really crazy because he was so big he didn't even know that he was shot. And that's kind of the thing that even my mom still remembers, that she had to tell him that he was shot because he still just had no idea. She thought he missed, and the doctor said that if he wasn't as big as he was, he would have died. I think with bodybuilding, I think all couples have trials and tribulations, and that's something I'm learning now, getting into it myself. I think being Hispanic and being darker skinned and dealing with the things that my dad had to deal with way back in the day, no one can really speak for, and I can't understand that. But I mean, it shows how strong my mom was. She definitely is the toughest person I've ever met in my life. because I think my dad is the hardest person to ever get along with. But they stayed together and they somehow worked it out and had my sister. But they eventually ended up getting divorced.
And talk about your progress, your first bodybuilding competition, how that came about, and kind of talk us through your competitive career.
So I started wanting to get into bodybuilding, and my dad was highly against it. I was really stubborn. I really hated him for doing that in the beginning, but now that I'm older, I kind of understand escaping from a country and having nothing, and then really bodybuilding is the only thing that saved his life. He wanted his son to do it a different way, through school, through an education, and that wasn't for me. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And when I first started working out in gyms in Chicago, my dad actually called gyms and told them that I couldn't keep working out there. And my dad's like the Arnold of Chicago. It's like Arnold was California. And they did whatever he said. And after a while, I couldn't take it anymore, so I literally picked up, got in the car, and I drove to Florida. And it was a small town, and I did my first show there. I was 176. I was a middleweight. So 6 foot, 176, definitely was all skin and bones. But it's crazy. I didn't win, but I loved it. I remember thinking that not only did I want to do this, but I felt like I was born to do it.
Let's talk about how you got to the level you are now, some of the competitions.
So I just tried to work my way up through the ranks and keep doing shows. The difference with me is, and I think that's probably why it hurt a lot of my hype, since there wasn't any, is I always did a lot of hard shows. Every time I did a show, it was always like a stacked show. I didn't want to waste time doing a lot of local shows and really beating no one and kind of making myself feel good, being the biggest guy at the gym, like a lot of people do, and that's fine. But I knew that the ultimate goal for me was to be a pro, so there was no point. I'd rather lose to a lot better people. So I did a lot of shows, but they were all national qualifiers, and I had a lot of setbacks, a lot of injuries and surgeries, and instead of me being on a pro stage already, I'm just now getting my pro card, so that hurt me pretty bad. But I just worked my way up through the ranks like everybody else. I never had a sponsor, I never really had any help, I never had anyone doing my diet until just recently. But that also helped me too. I used to think, I can do this on my own, I don't need anybody, and I learned real quick that you do have to have some kind of help. And once I stopped being stubborn and changed that, that's when I got my pro card.
And is there anybody that you would say would be a mentor of yours?
Yeah, I would say Lila Brada really helped me out a lot, just mentoring me kind of off stage. Chris Cormier has been a really good help all towards the end of my career. But these are all within the last year or two. The last 10 years, nobody.
And what is your goal? What do you want to do from this point on?
I mean, how do you be the first child of Mr. Olympia and not want to win the Mr. Olympia? That's got to be the ultimate goal. That has to be the goal, or I feel like my career is a failure. I'm always going to be compared to that guy. I feel like I'd have to win 100 Mr. Olympias to be able to ever get out of that guy's shadow. But if I could just get on that stage and do well, that would be a dream for sure. But to even think about winning it, if you really know anything about bodybuilding, it's kind of insane to say that you want to win the Mr. Olympia. Everybody says that, of course, that's something that they wouldn't mind doing. But it's like asking somebody who just got drafted in the NFL and they're like, oh, you're going to win the Super Bowl? Like, I want to, but, time will tell. He's waiting for that chick from the bar.